Example of procedure 1A, front move activation. And this example will serve as overall movement example for other activations. With other videos, we're just gonna make short examples of other activations. So this is exactly the move activation. Let's say it's 9 o'clock. Oh, and for the sake of this example, there is nothing historically accurate. The whole units from this part are on the second table with going on Northern campaign, playtest campaign. So don't bother about that armies are not on their terrains during the given time. So we have 9 o'clock. There is HG suit activation, which activated previously 10th Army, and now we get move activation. So let's go with the procedure step by step. We're going to try a few examples. So there is main procedures book, and all of activities are presented here. And there is procedures quick reference. When you know the rules already and got through the main procedure book, you can use this document to just check the shortest procedure just with keywords and to remember what was there. So the first one is activate all units, including out of command. So 10th Army HQ is right there. Units, we have 4 units of 10th Army. And let's see if all of the units are in command. Those are for sure yes, and this one is probably not. Let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. It is, because our HQ range is shortened by 1 because of conflicting orders, which is in the next step. B, conflicting orders for armies with turned HQ or move combat, meaning ahead of time token, and reduce HQ range. So let's say this unit is actually 1 hex further. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Let's say that this unit is out of command at the moment. We don't have to indicate this, but on the cubes we have out of command side, so we can temporarily mark for the record units that are out of command. Next we go to C, daily foot range, mark with range cubes. And this step is here to remind how daily foot range works. So let's say if this unit was with X, it wouldn't be able to activate. Let's say it has, for example, 2. Then perform movements, excluding X units. So those units that have used their DRF maximum already. So D1, stop entering enemy zone of control, except armor units. So armor units have indicator right there, that it doesn't have to end its movement when it enters zone of control. For the sake of example, let's say this unit is here, and this tank unit, this Panzer division, can move from, let's say, from hex to zone of control to zone of control. It would cost 1, 2. leaving zone of control is 1, entering zone of control is 2, so it's 4. Or simpler, moving in enemy zone of control costs 2, so it's 4 used. But it doesn't have to end its activation. This unit can continue moving, for example, go south. Leaving zone of control is 1, and on the road is 1. So it's 6 movement used. Next, +1 entering full zone of control and leaving full zone of control. So full zone of control are feature of units that are not disrupted, isolated, or in this case not reduced. As you can see, there's a little +1 crossed in the red hex, which means that this unit doesn't provide +1 penalty when moving in or out of its zone of control. So for example, this unit, again, if it goes like this, let's say it goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It can go like this. For example, infantry unit, which doesn't have ability to move in zones of control. For example, it goes from this hex to this hex. It will cost only 1, but because this is infantry unit, it will not be able to move any further in this activation. D4, no minimum 1 hex movement, except in ISOC, which will mean meeting engagement. So, small river, for example, costs +1 to movement. So let's say we can move from one ISOC hex to another ISOC hex, but in this case, going this way would cost 4 movement points. So 2 for clear terrain and 2 for moving in ISOC, and the unit has 4 movement points, so there's no problem. This unit can go this way. But in this case, there's additional +1 for the river, which means this unit cannot move this one minimum hex because it doesn't have sufficient movement points. There's the exception that was mentioned is in a case where unit cannot move any other movement but this movement. So for example, when being completely encircled by enemy units, for example, let's say like this. Let's get another unit. In this case, the only possible movement is right there, but without sufficient movement points. In this case, this unit can move 1 hex, but in this case, it's going to have to fight meeting engagement with negative dice roll modifier of 2, which will definitely cause step loss for this unit, but it can perform this move. Next one is confusion. So this is effect of conflicting orders or being simply out of command. So going back to this unit, which let's say is out of command, if this unit wants to move, this movement will have to be checked if unit is gonna move as intended. For example, I want to go to this hex. Die roll has to be performed, and 3 to 4 is going to be intended hex, 1 to 2 left, 5 to 6 is going to be right hex. If it happens that unintended move, meaning with die roll of 1 or 2 or 5 or 6, will cause this unit to or bump enemy unit or go into enemy unit's zone of control, it will also mean meeting engagement, but without negative modifier. Next one, cavalry interruption. So every cavalry unit has special type of zone of control, cavalry zone of control, which is indicated with little C in black hex in this place. Any unit that enters zone of control of cavalry or tries to leave zone of control of cavalry can be target of cavalry raid. There's a table. So if this unit tries to leave this hex, cavalry can stop this movement. Or if unit enters a hex or tries to move from hex to hex in cavalry zone of control, cavalry can always react. When reaction is successful, then unit doesn't move and stops where it is. And the table looks like this. We check what type of unit is trying to move within cavalry zone of control. So it's panzer unit, motorized unit, or infantry unit, and we roll 1d6 without any modifiers. And -1 means that cavalry loses a step, so possibility of losing a step is really high. In case of infantry is 50-50, in case of panzer unit is 5 on 6 chance. Then, if the background is white, the cavalry stops and ends activation of given unit. So ending activation of given unit is has a really high chance of being successful. Red means attacked unit can continue activation, and the yellow means that attacked unit stops activation plus mentioned legendary clash is generated. We take token of legendary clash, put it right there, and it can potentially add morale level at the end of the day. Next one is bridge demolition and repair. So bridges are in few classes. Basic ones are yellow, orange, and red. Red can be blown by Polish player when he wants to. And in case of orange and yellow bridges, the difference is in die rolls. So no bridge, no yellow or orange bridge can be blown up by Polish player in advance. It's always it's a kind of a checked when the German unit approaches. So, for example, if German unit enters hex with this bridge, Polish player can roll 1d6 to check if this bridge is blown or if it's intact. Then it's covered with green cube. For repairs of the bridge, if a unit starts its activation adjacent to the blown bridge, German player, if hex behind the bridge is free of enemy units, so in this case this bridge cannot be repaired, in this case it can, then German player can roll 1d6 and check if the bridge is immediately repaired. There's another option. A unit can use 2 extra movement points to simply, if it has, of course, sufficient movement points, to cross the destroyed bridge and repair it automatically. But in the same activation, all of units that are going to cross this bridge are going to add 2 movement penalty for crossing this bridge. Next one is D9, Army Operational Areas. Basically, different armies like Army Prusy, 10th Army, 8th Army, and all other armies. Armies have operational boundaries, which goes like goes like this from unit to unit. So for example, right there, right there, right there, and this would be army operational boundary. No units from other armies can ever cross operational boundaries of armies. One exception is activation of Polish coordination. When coordination is successful and armies are able to contact themselves, then two armies can work as a one army. There's another exception, which is actually kind of an end game after the general staff leaves Poland, where operational groups another operational army groups are created. Then there are HQs that can command more than one unit from other armies. Then we go to step E. Infantry, including motorized infantry, can detach a regiment. So in this system, every infantry unit can spread its position. And it goes like this. If we have full strength, so meaning having full steps infantry division, and this is the case only in divisions, you can expand all of its movement. So let's say this 12 Polish division infantry division unit can spend all of its movements to be covered with -1 detachment counter, and then let's say produce one regiment which can make a move right away. So for example, in this case, this unit can use all of 4 movement points, and then this regiment can go and of course be marked with DFR. Every division can detach another regiment, but then it's going to lose a step, and this step cannot be reproduced until regiment goes back to the division, and then the detachment counter will decrease. And this is next step, consolidation. Regiment towards division with detached marker. If a regiment, and keep in mind that regiments are default units, meaning you can, for example, detach a regiment from one division and then transfer it to another division, if this division, of course, is covered with detachment marker. But if at any time a division is on the one hex, division with detachment counter is in one hex with regiment, then automatically this division is going to be attached. This regiment is going to be attached back to the division. What is downside of detaching regiments? Well, division with detached regiment gives enemy positive modifier for attacks against this unit, and as division has more steps and it can prevail longer in its terrain, regiment is a one-step unit. And as you might predict, rebuilding regiments it's much more expensive and creates much more problems than simply returning a step to a reduced division. Next one is G, armor spearhead. Every armored unit in the game, which, well, let's say every tank unit in the game, can detach a spearhead. It costs 1 movement point, and it can be done in any time of movement. Division can deploy this counter, which will mean that zone of control of this division will be spread around larger terrain, which can cause, for example, isolation of units. Moreover, those units are light motorcycle motorcycle recon units, and those units can go behind any terrain. So for example, motorized unit or panzer unit cannot cross unbridged river, but it can always put a spearhead. Why would you want to use this? Not only to encircle enemy, but also to secure the bridge. So let's say this unit stands here. Armored unit goes next to the bridge. Bridge is blown up. Panzer unit cannot cross this river anymore. So what would Polish player do? Block this bridge from being rebuilt. Unless the panzer unit deploys spearhead, which will block enemy unit and effectively make this bridge to rebuild possible. There are of course downsides of deploying spearheads, but this is going to be in another video. And why are those steps in different color? Because this is main procedure for all movements. So 1A, C to G are always the movement procedures. So for example, if we go to 1C, one army activation, we have perform procedures individually, move 1ACG, combat 1BFP, motorized corps, perform procedures individually, move 1ACG. So when you activate, for example, with corps activation, if you want to go to the movements, you just go back to 1A and then perform C to G. So little small recap. So C, remember about daily foot range. D, perform movements, remembering about stopping in zone of controls. +1 entering full zones of controls. No minimum 1 hex movement, exception in ISOC if this is the only option. Confusion, meaning check conflicting orders. Cavalry interruption, when you enter cavalry zone of control, enemy can react. Bridge demolition and repair. Army operational boundaries. Then E, infantry can make detachments, make consolidations, and panzer units create armor spearheads. So this is actually the whole movement procedure. And there's a step H, place move combat cheats forces spaces away from current time. So in this case, move would go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then advance time. So let's make a little example of play. Let's go back with this. I don't know, I set them up just randomly to just see what is going to happen. So we activate again 10th army, and this unit performs movement. 1, there's a Polish city which entering costs 1 extra movement point. So this movement would go 1, 2, 3 for Polish town. And that's it. It cannot move anymore because it doesn't have any sufficient points. We mark with DFR. 46 unit, 46 division cannot move in here because it costs too many movement points. Flooded terrain is 3. River is +1. Zone of control is +1. So the only option is to go this way, or close, or let's say keep this part of river safe and make a detachment. So this unit makes detachment instead of moving, so it spends all of its movement points and detaches 1 regiment, which will go south, 1 hex, and there's a bridge, so we check the bridge. Let's say it is blown. And this is end of activation of this unit. For example, this unit goes 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh no. Okay, let's start here. 1, 2, 3, because town is already secured. 4 plus 1, 5 is because of zone of control. And then unit is adjacent to the bridges. Let's say this bridge is intact, but this bridge is blown. Unit has one movement point left, so it can deploy spearhead, effectively securing this bridge to be rebuilt in the future activations. So that's procedure 1A, move from general movement order.